Hi, my name is David. I'm a co-founder of the Retro Gamer Society, and this is my collection. This is the majority of my collection as far as games go. I have about 1,500 items, about 260 NES games. I think about 100 of those are in the box, and maybe 75–80% of those are complete. I didn't really start out looking for complete games. I had a lot from whenever I was a kid, and luckily have stumbled upon some throughout my purchasing, and so I've accumulated quite a few. Probably my favorite system is the Super Nintendo. I have roughly 160 games. I don't know how many are complete. The Super Nintendo was the first console I ever purchased myself, I guess you would say. I had one of the dreaded garage sales with my grandmother whenever I was, I'd say 8 or 9. I'd have to look back exactly. But I ended up selling off a few NES games and Game Boy games that, of course, I had to go back and buy because everyone regrets doing that. But I went out, I bought the Super Nintendo, I fell in love with it, and it's my favorite system. Probably my third favorite console, if you want to call it a console, it's actually handheld, is the Game Boy Advance. Now, I have quite a few Game Boy Advance games complete. I like them complete, but the problem is that they're stored in these cardboard boxes. Sometimes they're hard to open up to get everything out. You end up ripping a corner or something. It's a mess. So I've actually started putting most of my Game Boy Advance carts into DS cases. They're up here, and as you can see, you can basically print off a label. I use a website called The Cover Project, and basically what they've done is they go in and they scan the box, each side of the box. This is a little custom here, but the back and the front of the box, try to get it as accurate as possible as the actual cardboard. And then you can open it up, and if you have one of the older style now DS cases, you can just simply put your game in here. You can put the manuals in here too. I don't. You have to Dremel out a big spot here, and it doesn't really look very good. But I recommend it. It's better than putting them all in a drawer or something like that. It's a nice way to display them without having to worry too much about destroying anything. Most people probably think Retro Gamer Society, all we do is sit around and play the really old games. Well, most of us actually still enjoy buying things for the newer systems. I chose the 360 this time. I have the PS3, I have several games for it, but unfortunately it kind of just turned into a Blu-ray player in the living room. The generation before this one, I'd probably have to go with the PS2 over the Xbox. I've accumulated quite a few PS2 games. I think that there are, there's a little something for everybody out there for the PlayStation 2. Another thing I look out for from time to time are reproduction cards. Now, you can get these online at 3 different vendors. There are a lot of forums out there that have guys that like to do this sort of thing for you, and girls. Now, a reproduction card is essentially the downloaded ROM of a game put on to actual hardware. All of the games that I have are either games that have been translated because the game was never released in the United States, or maybe a game that was never actually developed. It would be what's called a ROM hack, where somebody or a team of people have gone in and kind of rethought the mechanics of a certain game. The newest addition to my reproduction collection is this really nice, really well-made little box set of The Legend of Zelda, the Goddess of Wisdom, and The Legend of Zelda Parallel Worlds. The guy who did this for me, he does really good work. He does some other things. I'm not going to get into all that, but just to show you kind of some of the love and care that these guys put into stuff like this. You're not just always going to get some type of really weird random label put on your game. The individual that made these spent a lot of extra time with the artwork associated with them. I'm pretty sure all of this art is totally original. He designed it himself. So he's a very passionate Zelda fan. I haven't opened these yet. He even went to the trouble of kind of sealing these up to make things a little official. They each have serial numbers, you know, 2 of 5. It's pretty cool. And he also went to the trouble of spray painting the cards gold, which you can kind of maybe see through the plastic. Another thing that a lot of people do that not everyone knows about is actually modify older systems to add features or maybe things that we all wish we had back in the day. One thing I've learned how to do is to backlight an original Game Boy. It's not that expensive, it's pretty easy to do. If you can solder anything, you can get it done. But it's pretty neat. Another fun little modification that I've stumbled upon recently is backlighting the original Game Boy Advance. If you've ever played an original Game Boy Advance, you know that it suffered the same fate as the original Game Boy in that it had no backlight. The screen was color, the graphics were great. It was basically a boosted up Super Nintendo, which is awesome for me. But somebody's finally gone in and found a way to, I guess, quote, backlight it. The way they actually do it is they take a screen from an SP and you modify the inside of the case and do some rewiring, and you can get it in one of these. I don't have the biggest hands in the world, and this is a horrible device to play for longer than 5 minutes at a time. I highly recommend checking out one of these if you can. One thing that I collect that a lot of video game collectors don't is strategy guides. I was pretty heavy into RPGs whenever I was younger. I was an only child, so you know, whenever I wasn't out hanging out with my friends, I was playing games, and I really liked the idea of the lone hero, etc., etc. It's probably only child syndrome. Anyway, I kind of got into guides back then before, you know, you could just get onto GameFAQs and check everything out in 2 seconds. But I like them, they're fun, I have quite a few, and I'll probably keep buying them as long as they make them. That's pretty much all my collection. If you have any questions, feel free to get in touch with me. If you want to look at everything in detail, you can go to a website called vgcollect.com. My name there is Darko. I'll put a link here. Thanks for stopping by.